Thank you very much. Like she said, my name is Ilyena Hirskyj-Douglas. I'm from Aalto University in cold Finland, and today I'm going to be talking about creating an animal internet through design fictions for dog-to-dog communication. So my exploration to the animal internet really started 7 years ago when I got my dog. This is my puppy Zach. And I noticed that he would watch TV, and I started to wonder what he was watching. So I started to research into dogs and screen usage and how you really measure and capture this use. And I built screen devices for dogs, and I created some interesting methods and made some findings for home alone dogs over the course of my PhD. But the more I got into this area of technology, the more I started to realize that the technology that we create for animals tends to be only for really connecting animals to computer systems or to other humans. And so I started to see the way that we're progressing in HCI towards human-human mediated communication via technology is also the way that we should really be going for animal-animal technology. So to put this into context, in the UK alone, there are 8.9 million dogs, 2.1 million of which are left at home alone for a considerable amount of time. And this isn't always good for a dog's welfare, because without socialization, they can have sort of negative behaviors, and this socialization is actually seen as the second biggest issue of dog behaviors due to the lack of this dog-to-dog contact. And then socialization then further becomes an issue for the dog owners itself, who then do boredom behaviors such as chewing, barking, etc. And so if we sort of couple all these demographics together, it's quite clear that this is space in animal technology to allow home-alone dogs or dogs in shelters or other sort of cage situations to really connect with each other. So it's this sort of space of creating technologies for welfare and for animal-centric reasons that we come into designing an animal internet. And so we started off this paper with these sort of two questions of what would a dog internet look like and how would these dog-to-dog interactions look like. So seeing as we can't really ask the dog directly this, one method that's been used in animal computing is that of design fiction to create fantasy prototypes. So design fiction is a method that presents prototypes of what is plausible in the near future. And these prototypes are often provocative scenarios narrated through design artifacts as a way to facilitate and foster debates. Often seen as a social object for communications, these designs are hoped to provide substance enough to enable meaningful conversation. And this is really useful for animal technologies, as design fiction is a method that helps us situate a new technology like this within a narrative, here the dog internet, to help us really grapple with surrounding questions of ethical values, social perspective, causality in politics, and psychology and emotions. So the animal internet has been looked at before by Lawson et al., who used design fiction for a dog internet. So this is the example on the right. And they used it to make a smell-but interface as a captcha. And this interface was designed to test if the user was a dog or a human, because a dog would only be able to smell this. And here Lawson et al. Highlighted that there's been tensions between knowing what animals' intentions really are when the user isn't a human, ending in that we really need more speculative design. And North et al. Has also used design fiction with horses, presented here on the right, where he presented in this example, this is a horse with an automatic horse box, and this is taking the horse home after running in the field all day. And North found that design fictions is useful in animal computing to really explore what the otherness is, and to look how technologies can explore animals' daily life. However, these design fictions, animals weren't really included within the designs, and while Lawson looked at what a dog internet would look like, as we're interested in here, we're really interested in connecting two dogs to each other and not to other humans. But design fiction was really shown to be quite useful, and it nicely presents the tensions. So to explore this, what myself and Andrés did is we ran a workshop at CIDA, which is Student Interaction Design Conference, and we sort of introduced them into animal computing, and we used the World Cafe method with a design fiction spin. So the World Cafe method is where we have groups move around these 3 tables, and they left behind the ideas on sticky notes and sketch fictions, and this is a way so we can sort of co-create together, drawing from each other. And when the groups moved between tables, they would leave notes behind about what they designed and what they spoke about, helping the next group see what's already been done, and then each group could choose to either redesign something or stick with their designs and just keep modifying it. So we had 12 participants in total, including the dog, And through the workshop, we provided toys, dog toys, and games, and sticky notes, pens and papers, and things that just helped the ideation process. So the reason we had 3 tables was because we went around each table focusing on a different technology. So screen and tracking systems, haptic and wearable systems, and tangible and physical systems. We chose these systems as these are like sort of 3 key areas of development in the animal technology field, according to my previous literature review. And so while participants were making designs within these technologies, we asked participants to really investigate these 4 key questions, so focusing on the task, how we start and end the interaction, if the dog needed symmetries to both understand what was going on, and how can a dog act ordinarily within technology. So each group spent 15 minutes at each table, and after this process, each group narrated their journey around the different tables and their design journey overall. And so from this workshop, me and Andrés then analyzed all the drawings that we collected in a sort of bottom-up approach and chose the best sketches to capture the essence of the idea. So today, we came up with a total of 6 designs, so today I'm just going to go over 4 of these just to put the findings into context, as our primary contribution is really sort of the discourse that comes from the task itself. So the first design is called companion dogs, and what this does, so it sort of works from right going across. So what this does is initially a dog can pick up a toy to alert another dog that it wants to call through a series of woof sounds. If the other dog then would also like to play, they can pick up the toy as well, and this is sort of a confirmation that both want to start the call. And then they put it into the basket, the toy basket, which then establishes the connection, and then their projection is shown of each other. And if they want to play further, they can then push a button, which will then shoot a ball, so they can play fetch with each other. The third design we came up with was sort of taking advantage of the recent trend of YouTube channels for dogs and dog TV and sort of TV channels, and this handy sort of dog flicks-like device. And this is for joint viewing amongst dogs. So what happened here is the tail can be tracked with the tail tracking device on the top and a sort of UX approach to whether the dog likes it, and this way then the content can change to the dog's body language. And the buttons can be pressed on the bottom to manually change and also to call a friend so the dog can watch the different technologies with each other. And then when the dog's done with interacting, he can then just walk away and then the device will turn off. The fourth design we have is Tangible, which allows dogs in different homes to play fetch with each other while also seeing holograms of each other. So if one dog picks up the Tangible and throws it, this will move the ball in the second home, stimulating sort of the owner throwing the ball. And then the final design that I'm going to be talking about today is based on this tug-of-war game that dogs do with ropes, called rope pull. And this is very similar to companion dog and dog flicks, where the first dog that wants to start the interaction would then sort of bite down on the technology, which would wiggle the rope in the other dog's house, that they would then have to bite down on to confirm that they both want to start the interaction, at which point the sort of tension and torque of the rope would then be translated across to the different dogs. So whilst these sort of 6 designs and the 4 that I showed here were then sort of used by the participants to simulate this circus space, what really important was the themes that we noted coming through. So the first theme was towards the creation of technologies for dogs for interaction, and the second was the interaction mechanism that the designs really reflect out. So to do with the technologies, we noticed that we often sort of repurpose items in dogs' everyday life. So here we had like ropes, balls, and toys. So it was clear that interfaces should really reveal its functionality through the affordances, where the designs need to be very self-discoverable and intuitive for the dogs. And this is a requisite for constant affordances, is very self-evident if we look at current dog toys, where they're very implicit within the design, such as sticks and ropes and things like this. But more work really needs to be done to look at how we repurpose these and what this meaning is for the dog. And additionally, we spoke about mapping these affordances systematically through things like tail wagging for liking, binding down and dropping a toy to really confirm an interaction. And so there's this element of allowing the dog to choose to take part or to start the technology itself has already been highlighted in animal technology as a form of consent, so the dog being able to say that it wants to be within the technology interface. And this really gives the dog more autonomy over the technology itself. So this was thought also here in terms of having more sort of moving novel objects or walking away or sort of interacting with the device somehow. And so these sort of novel feedback methods we see is really being key to developing dog-to-dog interfaces. And we suggest that we really need to look at how we adapt current HCI ones to investigate if these are suitable for these dog-initiated interactions. So the second part we noticed was really around the interaction paradigm for these dog-to-dog interactions. After all, the system is about two dogs trying to communicate with the technology as a mediator. And as such, there was really a need to understand what both sides thought of the interaction. And as the word of one of our participants, they asked, what can you really interpret from tracking a dog? So in animal computing, questions have been really raised by what it means to be an animal interacting with the system in a very philosophical way, and also in comparable to sort of Norman's gulf of interaction. So we kind of take the belief here that dogs' intentions can't really fully be measured, as we can only capture the animal's interaction, for example, in tail tracking, where we mentioned with the dog flicks device, and what it means for an animal to interact, and importantly more, the animal's interpretation of their interaction, we don't really know. So in this case, what a dog would expect to get from another dog in a computer system, and what a dog would expect to get out of technology interaction, isn't really known. And so this is especially true when we start thinking about the meaning that we assign behind the interaction, especially done through our interpretation of what is happening and what we can see happening. So while we live with dogs and we're fairly used to their behavior, and we come in this sort of becoming with approach where we understand things, when we start thinking about the animal internet for other animals that we aren't necessarily familiar with, what technology looks like becomes a bigger question. So here instead we suggest that animal technology isn't about creating full systems that we can fully comprehend and understand. Instead, we need to create part of systems and really look at what these different parts mean. And we need to acknowledge that certain parts are going to be unknowns and that this is okay, much in the same way that when we design for very young children, we don't always understand the interaction totally. So you might be wondering now, like, how does this animal computing really associate to HCI and get into Kai? So the work here, I think, really fits in because we use sort of this HCI method for animals. And as we have done here, we sort of question the findings and outcomes of what discussions we have, and we cohere the designers to make more constant decisions about the assumptions that we hold. And this ranges from what the user values within design fictions to draw out what the interaction means and how we really design for the other. So in the future, we plan to start building more devices and sort of just further explore and reflect out and sort of shape what it means to be an animal on the internet. And as this is really sort of uncharted land, we plan to do this by just going out and building things. So if you're interested in this, please do get in touch. I am also, is the narrative of all my animal technology work, hoping to use these sort of devices and methods to really explore further ways of including a dog within the technology process and looking towards what it really means to be a participant as an animal. So in conclusion, I'd like to present sort of the first step into the dog-to-dog internet, and I sort of raise key questions around what it means to be an animal regarding to the interaction of technology through creating design fictions for a dog internet. So thank you very much for listening, and I'd like to invite any questions.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Do we have any questions? Yeah. Please come up to the microphone, or just raise your hand and a student volunteer is going to bring a microphone to you.
Yeah, very interesting. Can you hear me?
I think you can lift it up.
Oh, hello.
Hey.
Samsung Research. Very interesting. It seems like one of the important things would be the relationship to the real world, and what the events in whatever system you built, the interface, how it related to the real world. So having a buddy play in the park, and then that same buddy show up on the system, and the dog know that it's, your buddy, the same color ball, the scent, whatever is, carries over. It seems like that would be a critical component. Is there anything that? And then the other angle here, I wonder if you have any thoughts on these, would be to involve the dog in the process would be some sort of like A/B testing, prefers this type of interaction, and then you allow the dog to choose the method for the future.
Yeah, so just remind me, the first question was about how it recognized the...
Yeah, like if you had a rope pull and then I don't believe that the dog would know that there's a dog on the other side. It's only an animated toy. So to relate the rope pull to the fact that it's another dog, maybe that activity needs to take place in the real world so that there's a translation to the virtual world.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. And we don't really... So initially, when I first started this work, people used to say to me, a dog doesn't recognize anything on TV, and since then my work has disproven this. So we don't know necessarily what a dog could interpret through technology. So I think to make this association between, okay, this is my friend from the park who plays similarly with me, is an area that I think really needs high exploration, and I don't really have any sort of answers for you on how you would do this. And the second question?
I don't know, just the A/B testing, getting the dog involved in the design process.
Yeah.
The dog seems to like this toy or this texture or this color.
Yeah, A/B testing is very interesting, and I like the idea behind it, but then I think that you're still in the paradigm of I decide A and I decide B, so it's only within those two scenarios. So it's kind of hard as well, because dogs, what they tend to do is if you show interest in things, they'll sort of fake interest in it as well, and so and they follow things like gesture cues and eye gaze and things, so it's very hard to sort of untangle yourself from the dog and the interaction. But thank you very much for your suggestion.
Hi, I'm from the university. Hiding in the audience. Thank you so much. This was very exciting, and something that I sort of thought about is, have you considered kind of leveraging the animal's sensory system to create new, like novel forms of interaction? For example, having notifications that would be inaudible to humans, and sort of allowing like animal-to-animal back-channeling that humans can't necessarily perceive or control?
I hadn't thought about it in the back channel. I thought about it so this is super interesting. Like, I would love to talk to you more about this. I thought about it in terms of going off the dog's ordinary feedback, and I keep hoping like technology advances more in the smell direction, because this is dog's primary sense, and a lot of the moment technology is very, like as you saw in my examples, is either visual or very sort of tactile. But yeah, it's a super interesting idea. Thank you so much.